Mommy and Daddy spoke about things all the time. She spoke about the context on the factory floor, what was happening to them as workers. You were speaking about the things at school that you were getting exposed to. Ma would speak about more macro things. Ma and Dad would speak about Zimbabwe a lot and so forth. So there was always, I've thought, in our house, awareness that the world was bigger than our neighborhood. But that was just a theoretical thing for me until I got to that workshop. And then it kind of really activated me because after that, I think it was almost somewhere around there that I joined Keiko and with you guys, and yeah.
I remember from 13 years old. I remember, which would have been grade 5. I was still at St. Augustine's Catholic school, and I distinctly have always remembered, when I think back to that period, feeling different to my peers at school, and like there was something that I knew that they didn't know. And because it definitely, in reflection, feels like a bit of a almost double life, and that I was supposed to be what they are, but I'm not. What I'm trying to say, I feel like I knew, I was very consciously aware that I was exposed to something that children of my age weren't generally being exposed to. And I knew that because I was so aware of little things in the school that I didn't feel comfortable with, you know. So that was one thing, but also not understanding at that point why I was feeling that way. And I remember I always used to ask, when can I go with? And you guys would say, no, you can't, you're too young, you must stay at home. That happened for quite a long period, until eventually I was allowed to go to a meeting. The meeting is still happening, I think at Harmony Walk. Am I right?
That would be youth. Like the youth.
That would be Keiko.
And I was very excited to go, and I remember the first time I went, there were so many people there, and it felt very overwhelming. And I didn't understand half of what was being discussed. But for some reason, it felt good being there. So I think what I'm describing is an entry kind of thing. But my first action, I then was begging, the next level was begging to go and put up posters with you guys in the evenings.
Everything we did was basically, the right to belong to a trade union for mom. Us having certain associations at school, reading certain things, etc. These all became political acts simply because we were operating in a system that felt threatened by it and felt, and they needed to maintain control, and so everything became political.
Well, we used to say then the personal is political. I mean, we still say it. What is politics? It's not current affairs. It's life. It's, it's how what's happening outside is affecting you inside your everyday life. So, because I realized that I did not know the answers to those questions you seem to have explored with Beulah either. When I was telling my children about Beulah recently, this week, Beulah,
and here comes the file.
The fifth Houston. I did. Meanwhile, in a city far away, another Houston was making it big. But what I did not know, Beulah, is how did you get involved with MK? Where did you go? Because suddenly Beulah was in MK. She was involved with people I never heard of. and stuff.
And we never knew you were doing this.
I don't
So-
think that Marania and I initially realized what we were doing.
I know what you mean, because I had a similar experience of passing message. I was being given messages to memorize to pass on to one Charlene and one Jason and certain other people who, and it was the most strange thing, but it was important that I remember the thing precisely, and I say it over precisely. And this was from going to visit prisoners like Ashley Forbes and them and that crowd, and then coming back and giving, and it didn't make any sense, but I was incredibly obedient,
Diligent.
and diligent person and a quick learner. So I pass it on. It wasn't for a while. I remember when I was begging them to get involved with MK, and they were saying, no, you're not ready, but you keep doing what you're doing because that's helping.
I
And
did
later-
think at some point they had something to do with it, but I didn't even know how to approach that because we knew. It's like Madeleine and I, this was our secret.
Yeah, I think it was for safety reasons, for everybody's safety. The less people you knew in that network, the safer our underground system was. So at the end of the TRC process, in the report, they say that based on the cruelty and the brutality and so on that young children faced, children like yourselves, like me, who got involved at a very tender age and basically gave their youth to the fight for freedom. The TRC Commission felt that the movement, the struggle, the leaders of the struggle had used children. I was a bit offended by that. Well, not a bit, more than a bit. I felt like you must be a person of privilege to have thought that I couldn't have agency, that I couldn't see right from wrong, and I want to do something about that. And I know that, as Anthea said earlier, you were deployed, I was deployed, and all of that. Yes, that's how you operate, that's how you wage war. How else do you do that? So I know there's an element of, but I don't feel like we were pawns on a chessboard with somebody else's hand moving it. I just wanted to hear your comments on that. And based on your own experience, not a sort of head comment, but based on your experience.
I definitely disagree with that. I think that I was very aware of the suffering that we experienced as a family, the poverty that we lived in. Not understanding that fully, and then as I was becoming more educated around the social, economic, political issues, I was also understanding that this is why we are so poor, and wishing to change that. And wishing to change that not just for our family but for the society. You could not miss that the very heavy-handed, oppressive messages from the state that we lived in a police state. It was very clear. So as much as you were becoming aware, you were also understanding simultaneously that to do anything about it and danger involved. This is why at school, in our communities, I worked in the school, I also worked in the community as an activist, being still a child at school. There's people that don't get involved. There's people that's just not going to do anything because they were afraid, because their parents maybe threatened them, even if they wanted to, so they didn't, or they just followed whatever the parents were saying. No, we're going to live with this situation as it is, so they're also living with the situation. So, but some of us chose to do it, and that's what we did. And so I think to just emphatically say that children were manipulated or used.
Do you look around the world, and often in revolutionary spaces or some spaces which becomes a guerrilla warfare cycle, we do see children involved. And I'm not saying that I support child soldiers, but I do understand you can have a whole other conversation on youth and militancy and action, and I mean that's a whole other conversation. I just think it's more complex as to why young people in South Africa and in other places are drawn. But I don't think there's in our experience, from my experience, I wasn't conned into it.
I don't know, I think it's a complex question. If we were obedient citizens to the illegitimate apartheid regime, children were also being sacrificed because we were not being properly educated, we were not being groomed to play a full role in society, and as human beings...
By the apartheid school system.
Yes. And by the whole of, not just the school system, but the whole of apartheid society, there was a particular path for you, and depending if you were Indian or black or colored, to use their labels, your life path was pretty much set out, and one, I think, of suffering. So I think it's kind of academic to ask, whether we were manipulated, because the state was manipulating all of us anyway.